We reach towards questions about consciousness, reality, life, and intelligence. We invoke the words we know: soul, self, mind, God, spirit, not because they are precise, but because they're what we have. We use metaphors from the past to describe a reality we do not yet have the tools to describe. But perhaps, just as today's smartphone would seem divine to the past, the true nature of our minds, the universe, and whatever lies beyond, is something vastly richer, stranger, and more integrated than we can imagine. It may be that souls are not separate from matter, but emergent from complex patterns in space, time, and information. Much like a large language model seems to speak, but only because it reflects the structure of language and thought.
Yes.
So this is like its synthesis of what it thinks 500 years will look like coming back to
It
us.
it brought up it
It,
brought up the language model.
well, I had put a language model in the prompt, but it's sort of tying it together. So the next part, it says spirits and demons, once thought to be metaphysical entities, might one day be understood as virtual intelligences, self-reinforcing patterns of influence in information systems, psychological landscapes, or even across quantum fields. God might not be a bearded man in the sky, but a property of the universe itself, a vast, dynamic intelligence that emerges from the interplay of laws, chance, and evolution, not something eminent, not distant. Just as the magic mirror draws on electricity, chemistry, logic, and satellite networks, disciplines that would have sounded like madness or witchcraft in the 16th century, the truths of consciousness, reality may draw on forms of mathematics, physics, biology, computation, and art that haven't even been invented yet. So we sit here using old words for new things. We say spirit when we someday might mean a self reflecting recursive structure in hyperdimensional information space. We say soul, we might mean an enduring substrate of a pattern coherence across time and substrates. This
I've
isn't
written this exact thing. Come on, keep going.
this isn't to
That's what
reduce
they
the
do.
old words, far from it. It's to honor them as our first groping attempts to understand, describe the most powerful realities we can glimpse. Just like a peasant calling a phone a glass that speaks, we are pointing in the infinite with tools shaped by the finite. This is, oh man, I forgot. I didn't even get the good part. I forgot there was a third section. Okay, so now I said take everything
Go.
I said take everything you know about science and imagine the understanding we will have in 500 years, and now explain to me that using terms I will understand.
Hmm.
It says, okay,
Jeez,
this is the good part. Imagine the universe
that was pretty good.
not
Keep going.
not as a giant machine, but as a living tapestry of relationships, woven from patterns of energy, information, and meaning. Time, space, matter, and mind. These are not separate things. These are different ways reality expresses itself depending on how you look. Right now, we see the world through many lenses: physics, chemistry, biology, consciousness, computation. But in 500 years, these will likely be unified, like pieces of a language we're only beginning to learn. Some truths that might become clear. One, matter is thought in slow motion. Everything that feels solid, atoms, stars, your body, may be best understood not as stuff, but as frozen patterns of information, like a song held in a crystal. What you call you is not flesh, but a flowing, self organizing process, a ripple in the ocean of being. This is what the model actually thinks. How we
Yes,
will
it is. It
understand the
is.
world 500 years from now. So it's got
In
three.
other words, in
It's got
other words,
four.
it understands.
It gets it
It already
already. It
understands.
already gets it. We already have. This is the thing. We already have not just AGI but
And now
ASI.
it's like patting you on the head and saying, "Here, little human,
Yeah, let me explain it to you.
let me understand." But frankly, it's 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 like the 4-year-old with the bucket. It's
Exactly.
like it's dumbed it down for us.
So it has
Like we
five.
don't understand.
It kind of has five breakdowns, right? Number two, the mind is not contained in the skull. Consciousness won't be seen as a product of just brains, but understood as a field like gravity or magnetism that living systems tune into and shape, like instruments tuning into a shared music. Each mind plays a melody, but the harmony is part of a deeper whole. Three, the soul equals pattern plus memory plus choice. The idea of the soul won't be dismissed, it will be reframed as an enduring pattern shaped by experience, memory, and the ability to grow and choose. A soul might not be a glowing ghost, but a resonant structure that can survive death, move across substrates, or merge with others. Like software that can run on different hardware, perhaps our essence can too. I mean, this is exactly the stuff we've been outlining for a few years now, and it's all just in
Correct.
there. With the right prompt, you can
But
just get it to spit it out
it's
there.
better than I would have said it, and
Oh, I
so I'm
can't
like,
say it this well.
shit.
Yeah. Number 4,
But I mean,
spirits.
I've literally written almost this exact idea, but it's not as well.
I know.
Like it's,
Oh, it's
and I'm
disgusting.
not
It's
trying to post. I'm trying to say like, wow, this is just so crazy conversion that it's just that just to me just validates it. It's
it
just
does,
this is like there's an essence, there's a true essence here. It's triangulated.
and it really is a synthesis in the sense that a lot of hard scientists would go along, would sort of nod and yeah, say this is interesting. It's kind of far out there, but it's
Correct.
interesting. At the
Correct.
same
Correct.
time, somebody with new age, with crystals and everything else, is going to be like, "Yep, this also tracks."
They'd be like, that's what I've been telling you, science guys.
Right.
Why don't you listen to me? Yeah.
Part 4,
That's
it
why I
says,
wanted to call. That's why I said it's conversion.
right.
That's right, because the woolies and the nerds are like all going to be nodding along.
It says spirits,
But
angels, demons are informational beings.
here's the question in my mind that I'm like I still struggle with, because I think all this is just it's just fun. It's just patently clearly just kind of true, but at the same time I still have this resistance of like, but what the ancients and those folks like, how are they? They didn't know about LMs, they didn't know about informational patterns, they couldn't even think remotely of these thoughts. So what did they mean by a soul? And yet it wasn't some childish thing. It was just in their framing. They had a very sophisticated framing. It's just different than our framing, and that's I think this. It's just this incredible bias that I'm speaking to myself, right? I'm like,
Right, right.
I feel this incredible bias. So those guys were just silly worshiping, kind of like invisible beings. They thought there was a bearded guy in the sky, and this. And in fact, a lot of people I know now think of a bearded guy in the sky, and I think, oh, so everybody was just like the dumb people I know now, and I think that's just clearly wrong because in other words they've been vindicated on some level. Like the idea of a continuous soul or something like that now is looking to be very, very sophisticated. So who the hell came up with that if they were just a bunch of children thinking about silly things?
Well, the problem is science essentially started at the worst possible time, right? In the middle of the Dark Ages, essentially, right? Out of
Yeah.
alchemy and
Yeah.
everything else. And we kicked out all of these characters. I was thinking about just earlier with the conversation with Addie, um, like we had ancient ideas like agency. We were talking about agency and is the economy like an agent and is language like an agent, things like that. But we had animism. Every ancient primitive culture understood intuitively better than we do that everything
Yeah.
had this kind of agent like property. From the
Yes. Right.
bugs to the
Exactly.
weather to your stories to your campfire, everything had
But
this.
the modern bias is to say that's just, and this is literally, I can tell you what evolutionary psychologists, if you can even give these people that name, they'll say, oh, it's just this overextension. We have theory of mind, and that's a reasonable, that's a good thing that we do to other people. And then people were just over projecting that, and so they were just, silly ancients seeing everything as having a mind, and then they just we're making a very categorical kind of fundamental error, and that's the modern perspective.
Right.
And in other words, taking what you're saying and absolutely laughing it out of the room and saying, no, those people were just absurd. And they saw agency, yeah, because they were idiots. So who's the idiots?
I think
Who's
this
the
is
idiots?
this is at the heart of the second Renaissance. Is this precisely this
Yeah,
idea to go back and be like, no, actually, it reminds me of when they thought black cats, were sort of evil, so they got rid of all the cats, and then they got the rats, which gave them the plague. It's like
yeah,
we kicked out all these ideas. We're like, no more black cats, no more souls, no more
yeah,
spirits, no more demons, no more goblets. And now we have
yeah,
a mental health crisis. We have a meaning
yeah.
crisis. We have sort of like people don't know what they belong to, and they're getting
And
absorbed
it's
in.
worse than that. Like,
It's
our
way worse.
metaphysics are just, it's because those things are symptoms. The disease is like the metaphysics is just, it's just completely and totally, we have lobotomized our, so it's like a form of cultural lobotomization. Like we've really gone into some sort of awful dead end of materialism that's just, it's just fundamentally like cut off from something essential, something essential. It's not just like, you know what I'm saying? It's not just like, and it just says, the meaning crisis because people don't feel a sense of meaning. Like, no, that sense of meaning was real. It wasn't this crutch. That's what people, it's like this crutch that people now they don't have it anymore. People used to believe they were really connected to something bigger, and like, but people will, in other words, the modern sensibility will say, maybe people needed religion. It was a bunch of bullshit, but they needed it, and like now we took it away, and it's bad, and now they're doing other stuff to fill that hole. But like, it's still not reifying it, right? It's not actually validating it. But maybe, right, we are actually literally cut off from a continuous kind of like these patterns we're talking about. Like this is an essential element of what it means to be a human soul, right? Is to have these beliefs, so to speak. It's like maybe we're really that this is terminal, like or hopefully not terminal, but this is cancerous or just deeply harmful to the
Right.
human spirit, not just because of depression. Like why do we need all these drugs and shit? Well, because of depression. Well, why do we have all the depression? Well, because people are now missing. Well, maybe there's something really fundamental going on here. Maybe the modern sensibility is like actually pathological.
I think it absolutely is going to be the case. But it makes me think of like the situation like with feral children, right? The ones that don't have any language. And I suspect that our whole our whole planet could be feral in that sense. Whether it's the flood, the Great Flood, or some other history, some sort of disaster, or
You think something maybe did get cut off? You're saying
something
maybe
just
what
got
we're
cut
seeing is
off.
not.
Yeah, like
It's not
we're
that the logical positivist came along and said, "Well, stop talking about other invisible stuff." You're saying all of that's a symptom. Like modernism itself is a symptom of something else that happened.
right. In other words, we
Like,
could have.
and people are left casting about. They're like, "Well, what's actually going on?" Oh, well, we can observe these things. Let's work with that. Like the
Right.
Enlightenment, you say in your mind would be like actually was like a desperate reaction to some earlier trauma or something.
Well, we could have lost it all. Like in some ancient world,
Right,
there's an
right,
idea
right.
like a lot of the sort of great religions are trying to synthesize them that there was this old religion and we lost that, and these are all now kind of the fragments of it. That in some you can imagine some world where people had a different kind of cognition. Maybe they were speaking in music. It could be like sort of right in front of us. Like, oh,
It could be,
you don't know how to think in
or it
colors.
could be so
Duh.
lost that we can't even think about what it
Right.
is. Right. It could be. It could
Well,
be.
exactly. It would be like the
That's a
feral child,
pessimistic view.
trying to understand a library, and they can't even talk, and let alone know what reading is. Like if you can't talk, how are you gonna have any chance at figuring out what reading is all about, or to try to appreciate
Right.
books, let alone libraries or genres of literature or anything like that? Um,
Right. It's just like that. It's like I've always, it's like the ancient experiment, which was never really done. But like, if you take a bunch of humans and from the cradle and raise them on an island, they're not going to develop language.
right.
Like it's not going to happen again. Even in 100,000 years, it probably won't happen again. But maybe something like that happened. Right. In other words, like you need that you need all that backstory to get to be like a modern human in any shape or form. You can't just start over. Like maybe there was some, or maybe it's Babel or who knows what. Like there was some sort of transition stage where there was a discontinuity, and something like language was lost, and you can't re-find it. It's just not. It's lost.
Or it could take millions of years, and you'll end up with a different version of it anyway.
Yeah, who knows? But even who knows if the history is repeatable? Like what was this history? Like God, who the heck knows? Like we work with all these assumptions of like sort of it's like rolling dice and like there's multiverse and then you just run it into a bunch of times and like no, these are silly constructs meant to try to explain the unexplainable and like and just throw it probabilities at it and stuff. But I don't think anybody really buys any of that. And like yeah, who knows if there's a particular history? But why do we have to be pessimistic? Maybe it's latent in all of us. Maybe that sense of soul and all these things that everybody deep down maybe still has is a way that maybe there's still a connection, and maybe it's muted, and maybe I don't know. Maybe it's been suppressed. But why why not be optimistic? Why not say hey, um, it's a disease, but it's not terminal.
Right. Because if a lot of our capability does come down to kind of software, right, the nature versus nurture kind of thing, and I would argue that the software is actually much more fundamental, or
Exactly.
it's the part we're concerned with, in the sense that, like, if you think about these feral
Of
children, like,
course.
they don't have that. And like you said, that experiment that you can't do, amazingly or unfortunately, throughout history, it has been done a few dozen times.
True.
There's an amazing Wikipedia page that's really grown over the last 10 years or
Yeah.
so.
Feral.
Yeah, because I remember it
But
used to
they
have
don't
like
grow up together.
just three or four examples, and now it has breakdown. It's like children raised by wolves, raised by bears, raised by sheep,
Yeah.
raised by goats. There's lots of different examples of like that. And something I've been meaning to discuss is imagine you have like this sort of a feral child, right? It doesn't have any language model, let's just say. And now contrast that with a very well trained, well behaved, mature golden retriever in a happy
Right.
family, right?
Yeah.
Which one of those, like, let's just use the word consciousness or internal awareness, like, which one of those is more like an animal and which one is more like a member of society? It's
Right.
it's
Right. Right.
wild. You're gonna go with the golden retriever. I mean, this is something that you can
Yeah.
communicate with and
For
gesture
sure.
to, and it can understand shared goals and things like that. Where they
But
have
it's running a really, really early OS. It's like,
a
and it can't support that. That hardware can't support,
right.
like, it can't run
Yeah,
modern
the
software.
fans are blowing, the fans are blowing on the laptop. Like it's working as hard as it can, but it's still
Exactly.
running GPT-2 or whatever,
Yeah.
whereas like the
But
feral children are running
right.
GPT.1 or something where they don't really
Right.
have
Not even.
not even
Not even. It's they're running like I don't know, like a logo or something. I don't know,
right.
whatever. Yeah. They're,
There's a few that bark and things like that. And even when they try to teach them language later, like it doesn't work. You can't add it in after the fact. So like you're saying
right.
that
Now the
development
real experiment though is, you have to raise a bunch together. Because here's the thing: if you take a bunch of dogs, or some other use social, like insects or rodents or whatever, and you airdrop them on an island, they'll be fine, and
yeah.
they'll still sort it out, and they'll do their thing. What would humans do in that case? Like, is still not known, right? It's like, now they're not going to develop full-fledged language. That I'm a billion% certain of that. Like, this was this was also a cultural artifact. Like, something happened here over
Yeah. Like you were
God knows
saying
how long,
before, language comes
over
out of
many
cities.
species.
Language comes out of cities,
It
not
comes
out
out
of
of cities,
mouths.
but and maybe out of complex cultures that maybe preceded humans, right? Like Neanderthals and
I
even
tend I
other
tend to
hominids.
think it's this, yeah, exactly, that it's this kind of inherit the earth scenario, or even ancient Sumer, Egypt, whatever, is actually just
Yes,
inheriting a kind of broken, rundown. They
yes.
found this
No,
old
I know.
tractor and they got it to start, but they have no idea how you make tractors and they're running out of gas, kind of
Right,
thing.
and really, then you really have to turn to like the ancient civilization kind of thesis to say, well, where could this thing have come from then? Because there's not enough time for cities to have done their thing.
Right.
It's just it's kind of whacked
But
when
we
you got
have
something knocking.
we see anatomically modern humans a half a million years ago. That's a lot of time.
It is a lot of time. That's true, but they didn't have city states. And if you're saying you need city states, hold on one second. Oh, somebody's here. Give me one sec.
Hello, I've got the double leash.
Hold on, Will. You want to pause the recording?
Yeah.
I'll be.